All right, I think we're recording. So, welcome everyone to what week is it of the semester? I don't know. Week 7. Okay, week 7 of the spring 22 semester. How's everyone doing?
No, literally terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, spring break is only 2 weeks away. So what?
Week and a half.
Yeah, week and a half away. So you have that to look forward to. A couple announcements. First of all, don't forget that next week's meeting, we're not going to actually have a Severe Weather Club meeting. However, we are all going to meet at the 4-H Center at 5:30 for spotter training courses. That's going to be, 5:30. I know a lot of people have class right up until then here at Tillman Hall. And so who here needs a ride? It needs a ride. You'll be here. Yeah, that's fine. Who here is able to give rides? Okay.
I will give you my first one.
So I will also need a ride. I'm not going to have the car. So it looks like there's going to be plenty of people though. So Joey's class gets out at 5:20. I'm going to ask him to get it earlier and I'll just go together. Is that okay? Everyone? What?
I can fit, like, there's me in the driver's seat, passenger, and 3 in the back.
Sure, that works perfect.
No, I can fit 4.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Yeah, you're passenger, always.
Anthony, you said that you wanted to talk a little bit about the conference.
Yeah, so I spoke with Dr. Thompson, and I asked him about the double thing. He said that basically he's asking the dean's office. He says, as of now, yes, they will pay, but he has to ask the dean's office because his teacher is not going with us.
Because the teacher, is Dr. Finch not going? Okay.
No, she's going to. I thought you would have remember that earlier.
Right, but I thought she, like, would go and then be back by that.
Oh, she said she's not going, so, but he says he thinks it's okay because me and Brandon are going, we're technically employed by the university. So we think once he hears back for sure from them, he'll let me know. But as of now, yes, they will pay for it. And Dr. French has donated $100 to gas, so.
It's very nice of her.
Oh, cool, got drinks.
So that is what is going on. And if you are undecided on going, I need to know ASAP, because that will depend on how many we have.
Right.
Right now, we just need 2.
So far, just 2, yeah.
But.
I probably use up over half of that gas, just so you know.
Just started.
For take. Or are you guys taking the van? No?
Probably we can, so we're not faculty.
Actually, grad students can take the university vehicle, but it's a laborious process, and so it might be easier to take their own private vehicles. What?
There's a train.
Oh, really? No, that's annoying. Okay.
Oh,
Well,
never mind.
yeah, no, that's fine then. Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to talk about, or I guess Andy wanted to talk about, is his T-shirt design. We come up with a mostly final design at this point, so we'd like to talk about it.
Cool. So we pretty much have a final design, barring me spontaneously dying or something like that. Here it is. I put out a poll last night on our Discord server.
What? Oh, I don't think anyone's in the meeting right now, but I will screen share anyway. That is a good call.
Our AOL Messenger room. So I posted a poll about everyone's thoughts because it was suggested by one of you, I forgot who would run it yourself, for white radar, white gradient.
Good.
Oh, I did that and everyone liked it, gave me lots of money, so that was nice, so I kept it. Added text, as I said I was going to do. I did make one edit that I didn't run past you. I added very slight gradients right here on the edge of the green portions, just because I didn't like how my eye just feels like a very sharp edge. It really doesn't.
Messy. Sorry. Good.
Are you talking about the gradients, just the whole thing?
No, like the little green thing around the green section. Well, the radar is messy anyways.
Yeah.
Right, but whenever I looked at that, I thought it was.
I read it to be like that.
Really?
Yes.
Yep.
I like it like that.
Is that one,
The gradient change, just on the edge of the gradient. Yes, but Ian and I, could you bring up the price thing? So Ian and I went over the, before you actually, wait. So if we just give them just white ink to work with, this gradient on the rings doesn't show up at all. Like they literally will not print it. Bring up the thing, please,
yeah,
however,
I can
if
show
we give
you.
them, if we give them both, yeah. So if I get rid of the black, then there's just no gradients at all. And artist's eye, that sucks, and I hate it. The gradient is supposed to fill the negative space and pull your eye centerwards, so I like that way better. However, the price difference for both the just the green splotching and also the ring gradient is like a buck each. Really only $1. Can you bring up the price?
Yeah, so what happens if we get rid of both of that white gradient as well as this green color to make it more sharp? The price would go down roughly $4 per shirt, for each shirt. And so the question there is trade-off.
Do we value that?
So what is the price?
Yep, so with, I'm gonna put back these gradients here. So with that, and then black. So with these gradients, we get the price of this shirt, and I'm assuming we're ordering 20, we might order even more than that as well, so that would also bring the price down. But assuming we order around 20 shirts, that would be $25 a shirt. Let's change.
So sell them for 30.
Sell them for 30.
Are we making money off these?
Would like to?
I would say let's not do 30, let's do 25, because I would not buy a $30 shirt.
Well, in that case, then we would have to bring the price down a little bit so that we can make a little bit of money off of it.
So can you scratch each color and see what price it gives
Or,
us?
okay, didn't we say we were gonna do like 25 or so, because I know it makes it cheaper than like we were all gonna get one.
Hey, my mom wants one.
Yeah, because I granted I would get one, and then obviously the girls.
I know a couple of people who get one too. Obviously, this price always depends on how many people are going to buy them. The problem is we don't know that until.
So go back to the pricing.
Sure. Oh, good. There we go.
You said you had what, 20 is what you had?
I think I have 20 shirts right now.
All right, bump it to 30.
Bump it to
Sorry,
30
you have to
shirts.
add it to Excel, that's my mom's size.
Okay,
So
I'll
it's like
add one
a
to
bunch of
Excel
Excel,
and then 9 of another.
Okay, well, that's gonna add more money, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, that would increase. That brings it to 22, and that's with all.
That's decent.
Yeah.
So then would you sell them?
So we could sell them for 25, and that would give us a slight profit. The other thing to consider is that if we don't get 30 orders, we could always keep them around and sell them for 20 to future students as well later.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a problem selling like 20 shirts, and then like getting up, I don't think we'll have.
So my first question is, A, do we have that much money in the account?
I believe we do.
Probably
So like
it was 700, 800 in the account.
Yeah.
Because that's what, 6?
Oh my gosh, that's so much.
So, I mean, like I said, if we don't sell 30, and then what is it if we go back?
We go, what'd you say?
Go
Oh,
back to it, I don't think it would be that much.
we go back to around 20-ish. It'll be,
So it's
yeah, this much.
it's about $3 cheaper.
So it only gets more expensive if we do like extra large and like.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, including with the pricing, we would include also you have to pay a little bit extra for a larger shirt. That is,
So for large too, or large, no, you're fine, it's, I was
That's
thinking,
fine.
because I know my family members, like my dad and stuff, like you.
the extra money starts at 2XL. So,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so Excel is fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we do 30, I guess we need to figure out, are we wanting money before shirt or payment before or payment getting shirt?
I would like the majority of payments, especially for people who aren't in this room right now, I would want the payments
Typically, we've done it before.
right before the shirt. Obviously,
How would you accept?
PayPal, we have PayPal.
I don't use it.
We have cash,
You can also just take cash.
check, money order.
Yeah, all those work.
Venmo?
Huh?
Venmo?
You could do Venmo, I guess, but you would have to put all one on us. And you would have to do it different, right? And like we-
You have
I'll figure it out.
We could do Venmo. We don't have to agree with the window because he did, and you have to pay taxes on it. I don't
Yeah.
like that, so.
Okay.
but maybe just Venmo. Can you what?
But
Stocks.
No, but I will let you, like, give us socks with quarters in them.
No,
That'll work.
actually, we want one Bitcoin for one shirt.
Yes, that's a good deal.
But yeah, so I mean, because that money, that'll wipe out.
It will, but obviously, we're not going to, give them out until we get paid, so.
Because the last ones, we actually made, I think, a decent amount of money.
The last ones we made around $100 off of them. If we were to sell 30 shirts and like sold all of them, then we'd make around 150, I think.
It was extra with that green, an extra $2 per shirt, right?
Extra $2-ish, yeah.
Yeah, what is it?
Okay, because if we get without, that's 20, if it's not 55, we get 4.
Yes, of
I know
course.
Andy hates the look of it, but as far as selling purposes, because that's a lot of money.
I sincerely hate the look of it.
I don't think it's as bad as you let
I don't
on.
think it's bad, but
but-
also I'm biased because I was treasurer and like that's like white short.
Yeah, a part of me, looking at the shirts,
Because honestly, I really like how you did it. It's just pricing wise, that $2 may not seem like a lot to you, but
Okay, how about this? I am willing to kill the extra green shading if I get to keep the white grading.
sure, how much is that?
I really like the white green.
I agree.
I'm almost wondering, I know I should have said this.
Oh, no, that's not the color I wanted to.
And shirts.
Undo that. I don't know what that.
Instead of having it right over the radar, what if you just got rid of the radar? Just get a nice solid, more on the look at it.
What do you mean by that?
Like get rid of the lines.
Get rid of
No,
the.
get rid of the dot to where we can actually see a look at it instead of this looking like a weird looking machine. If you're a meteorologist, obviously you know what this is, but if you're walking on the street, most people would not recognize this.
I don't think most people would recognize this.
Anthony,
But I guess okay.
Anthony, we literally had this discussion.
That's
The
why I
first
said-
time you presented this,
Hey, I
and
said-
no one
I
objected.
said.
You had the option literally a month ago to say this. Shut your mouth.
Well, I don't think the red dot really makes a difference.
Yeah.
The people on the street, they're not gonna see a red dot and be like,
No,
oh my
I-
gosh, that makes it a okay.
That's what I'm saying, but-
Honestly, I think as long as I get what you're saying, it's a valid point, but honestly, as long as people like it,
Look,
because a lot of us are.
the reason that I put the red dot here is that if you kill the red dot, people aren't going to know that this is a radar thing. But literally, everyone in the brain whether knows that you have a bunch of greens with a red dot or some sort of dot in the middle, it's a radar.
I think you'd be surprised.
What about, I thought we discussed putting in a rear beam.
Shit, yeah, so the file has a radar beam, but I turned it off to edit something underneath it, and then I forgot to turn it back on for render. So it's there, I just accidentally made
What is
it.
it?
Where is it?
The point of the northwest.
Putting right through the letters.
Yeah, that's.
I had it like right here, but I can switch to northwest, that's a super easy change.
I think it would look better in northwest.
Alrighty, do you want it, what direction?
We just said northwest.
Yeah, so I mean, like, what, clockwise or counterclockwise?
Oh, like the sweeping motion?
Obviously, clockwise is where they are.
Alright,
Honestly, I think you did great with this, but you let's get it out.
yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's get it out.
Very good, so, when I get back to my dorm today, I will re-enable the and then.
Will you send it in the Discord again?
Yes.
Just
I'll
so-
re-enable the radar beam, kill the green shading, and we'll be good.
Awesome.
Also, can you just show the final front as well?
Oh, by the way, yeah, we also have front design. This doesn't add to the cost at all, because it's just white. But yeah, you can see the little patch with WIU, SWC. Very similar to what he designed last time.
See the price?
Hmm?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the price of just the white green.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes, please.
Let's see, this is approximately 20 shirts as well, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's fine.
23, and then if we were to order 30, that would probably go down to around, let's say, yeah, let's bump this up to 10.
What does everyone think of the font for the?
I like it.
It's good, because I want to shoot for like similar to WIU's big ass purple W or whatever. I just thought it was good. Alrighty.
Is everyone okay with this solution?
Yeah, I like it.
Because we can sell the shirts for $25, we make $4 a shirt.
So what did we just kill to drop it down to 21?
The green gradient.
Yeah, oh, totally, sure, all right, yeah, deal.
So how much are we selling this for?
These should be sold for $25, and then if you get greater than an extra large, you have to pay like an extra $2.
Fine. Yep.
Sure, okay. If everyone's cool with that, then I'm
When do
happy.
you want the numbers by?
Either the week after spring break or the week after that, so we have enough time to get them shipped here.
What are you talking about? I'm
We're just asking when we want all the final orders by. So the week after spring break is probably when we want them.
So we can go home, ask families if
Yes.
they want a shirt, and then come back with numbers, give them to you.
I will say, I think it's gonna be easier to present to, because it's obviously gonna be electronic. But like for my friends and stuff, it's probably gonna be easier to present.
We're not gonna have one.
Yeah, exactly. So I will see.
Just do your best.
Yeah.
Is everyone cool with this though?
We gotta do the record, 75 shirts.
75, when did we get 75 shirts? Bucher ordered 75 shirts?
It was a lot.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know if it was 75, but I mean, it was almost $1,000.
I didn't realize that was, oh, okay.
Well,
Well,
go back to our board. Get multiple.
I've
orders.
got one of those.
I had no idea. I had no idea there were that
There
many.
were multiple orders for the shirt.
It's a cool shirt though.
Yeah, it is.
I do like that shirt. But yeah, I guess I'll check that off. We'll get that finalized in the Discord sometime. Oh,
Who's creating the spreadsheet?
I can do that. That's fine.
We'll do that tonight.
Yeah, I can do that. Cool. Okay, I will do that. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments, or concerns? If not, then I guess we'll move on to the main part of this meeting.
One
Sure,
minor little thing.
go ahead.
There is the potential that I might storm chase that day. So if I have a room that I don't know along with, I will put it in the Discord.
Where are you going?
I will the whitish area, we had to be pretty early, I think.
I would go with you. This Saturday's the first time in a while I'm actually somewhat free.
If I have, yeah, if I can, I will.
So I don't, like I said, I don't know 100% for sure, we might be able to meet some more school over there.
That would be so much fun.
You
I've never
really,
done that.
I've never done it either. I've been trying to go with Ankeny. It's just never worked out.
So it is,
I wanted to go, but it's not like.
we have to take multiple cars and carriages, it doesn't really matter.
So would you be staying overnight that weekend? No, we're just driving down. How far away is it?
When I've driven to Minnesota and back one day,
That's a lot.
that was a 6 a.m. to 1 a.m.
Was that when you were by yourself?
I mean, it's not, it wouldn't be that, we would literally still, we would be used to storm steps, so it wouldn't be that bad. So, it wouldn't be that long.
Yeah, if I can, I will.
Yeah, see, I don't know what's exactly happening, obviously, if nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
You said Saturday?
you literally picked the one day that I won't be.
You'll have more opportunities. Don't worry about that.
Just.
There will be
Yeah, I'll post it in this kid.
Alrighty. If there are no other things to talk about, then I would like to move on to the main part of today's meeting, which is my presentation. I apologize to people who have seen this before. I have presented this before, but there are a lot of people in this club who haven't seen it yet, and this is good. Because
Like a reoccurring.
I've given this presentation last week, so that's what it was. But I know a lot of you guys haven't seen it yet, and it's good for you guys to, I think, get some experience with this, because this is an example of a case study that I completed in my synoptic meteorology course. Each of you, when you guys take synoptic, over the course of both synoptic courses, you will be doing a case study like this, and as you learn more in synoptic, you'll be applying it more and more to this study. And so you'll have something like this at the end of it. Go ahead.
Well, do these have to be presented to the class?
To the class, yes, not anyone else.
Did anyone do Dodge City?
Yeah, you can just pick the same thing, it's not a big deal. Yeah, basically the structure of these is you pick a severe weather event that either you know personally or that you're interested in, and then you research it and you talk
You
about
guys
it.
have to create a website for yours.
We were going to, and then COVID happened. And that's another thing about this presentation is I never actually got to fully complete this because yeah, maybe a little bit, just because COVID happened. And so this isn't perfect. This isn't a completed analysis, the same that you guys would do after your full year of synoptic meteorology. But this is a good idea of how you would start and kind of the direction you go in this kind of thing. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get going. Slideshow. Okay, and I will also be exiting out the presentation a couple times. But yeah, this is my presentation on the March 2006 tornado outbreak. In the past, I would have said some of you might actually be familiar with this event, but a lot of you guys are young enough that you guys probably don't remember. Yeah.
I was two.
Yeah, no, I was 6 when this happened. This actually personally affected me. 2 tornadoes went through my hometown of Springfield, Illinois. And so I do physically remember this, and I do attribute this event to like kind of me wanting to go into meteorology. But yeah, I guess a lot of you probably aren't familiar with this event anymore. So yeah, even more reason to talk about it, I guess. So just kind of an overview. This was an extended outbreak of severe weather between March 9th and March 13th of 2006 across the entire central United States. Over the course of the event, this region saw 99 confirmed tornadoes, a derecho event, widespread hail reports, microburst winds, other forms of severe weather. It was a really big event, especially given its timing, which was early March. It's not so unheard of anymore, but especially back then, this duration happening in early March, kind of right near the beginning of the storm season was pretty remarkable. 2 questions already? Go ahead. You can first.
What's the duration of it?
We'll talk about it.
You're gonna.
Yeah, and then
Well, I don't remember ever it being like a tornado outbreak ever in March. It was like, I feel like it's too cold here. It's
There was one in this.
yeah, no.
December, right?
That's one of the things that drew me to this event was that tornado outbreak this early into spring is pretty it's not like unheard of anymore, but it's like it's pretty notable. Obviously, we have had tornadoes in December before. Those are crazy, but yeah, no. The other thing that I don't have on this slide, but I will talk about as well, this severe weather event is notable for producing the longest track supercell ever recorded. And so I will be talking about that as well. But yeah, this is just a map that I made real quick, just to kind of show you all the states that were affected by this. All the states in yellow here had severe weather associated with this event, and all the ones in red had tornadoes associated with this event. Severe weather, oh god, let me see if I can remember.
Like what counts?
Right, there are definitions for this. So a severe storm is one that produces a tornado. That is automatically a severe storm. One that has hail that's over 1 inch, yes. And then damaging winds, which is defined as over 54 miles an hour. 53 miles an hour? 35?
58.
58.
35?
Something like that. I don't know. I was ballpark.
It's 2 point, if the hail is over 2.5 inches, you'll get a wheel.
Yes.
So that's destructive.
So yes, any storm that
I
has.
think if it's over 2.5, you won't hear that because you will be dead.
Yeah, no. So yeah, those are the criteria for a severe storm, and so all these states had at least one of those happen as a result of these systems. And so I'll jump right in, and we'll begin on March 9th. The region, okay, let me rephrase that. The evening of March 9th saw a large squall line sweep through much of the lower Mississippi Valley. 4 tornadoes were confirmed, including an F2 in Arkansas. The reason we're concerned with F2s is that's the threshold for I think it's called just a major tornado, or basically EF1s and EF0s generally aren't that damaging, but F2s and above generally start to cause. Yes, this is also before EF2. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, the tornadoes actually weren't what the day was really that notable for. The day was more notable for the derecho associated with it. The derecho is defined by the SWC as a widespread long-lived windstorm, and more specifically, it must span 250 miles with sustained winds of 58 miles an hour or more, periodic gusts of 75 miles an hour. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. This derecho caused extensive damage, more than the day's tornadoes, in fact. Tens of thousands of people lost power, and at least 2 deaths were results of this storm as well. I'll show you the storm reports for this day. This is a very typical derecho SWC storm report. What you can see is obviously the report is predominantly dominated by these wind reports. There are 357 severe wind reports, and all these black squares in particular are high wind damage reports. And so you can see, this thing, tracked across, almost a third of the country, causing widespread wind damage across the entire land.
How fast does one have to be for it to be a weather report?
What'd you say?
How fast does one have to be for it to be a weather report?
That's a good question.
65 knots.
It doesn't
I don't
really
know
matter.
that.
You can literally take the 2-inch tree that fell on the ground, that's like.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's less on speed and more of just if it's damaged.
If it's damaging.
You can literally pull it on. They build it, of course, but.
Yeah, that's the other thing is you'll see these updated things. They do filter these reports based on, they'll investigate some of the reports that might be shaky, and so these maps are updated. But yeah, I'll go ahead. Here's sort of a synoptic overview of what's going on at the surface. You can see the big culprit here is this little low pressure system that's actually associated with a shortwave, and then this cold front right here, that's where the storm action is going to be. So I'm actually going to exit out, and I want to show you guys the radar image from this night.
That little triple.
No, I will be showing you a drawing in this presentation. Yep, you're all good. So here's some archived radar footage from this event. This isn't the best radar footage. I'm sure there are other archives that are better than this, but this is one that I found. So I'll show you guys this. So let's see, this is around sometime local time.
Could be 6 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, actually, that would be 16 around what?
Something like that, yeah. So what you'll see is there are obviously some scattered storms just associated with the system going through, but then you can see as the cold front comes through, you'll see the squall line really develop. And what I want you guys, especially some of the younger guys, to take note of is some places where this line will bulge out a little bit. I'm sure you guys have probably learned this in hazards by now, but if you haven't learned it yet, what you'll see when the line bulges out like this a little bit, this is what we call a bow echo. These are the places that are associated with the fastest winds in a squall line. Basically what happens, I think this is how it works, but basically as air travels up the front, it causes a lot of turbulent eddies. And what these eddies will do is they'll actually billow down the structure of the cold front and then flow out past the storm. And so that's where the lifting is going to occur. And in those regions are where the fastest and deadliest winds are going to be. Additionally, on the ends of these bows, there's some turbulence, some vertical vorticity induced, and so you can actually find some weak tornadoes in those regions as well. And that's where most tornadoes associated with squall lines come from. And so you can see as this line goes through the region, you'll see some places where it bows out and bulges a little bit, and those are going to be where the highest winds are, and so that's why some of the winds were so bad for this day's weather. Going back here, I can show you some images of a derecho. This is not this derecho. These images are actually from the Iowa derecho from 2020, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with at this point. But you can see these things are devastating. I mean, they're powerful enough to knock down grain bins, lift structures straight off their foundations. They obviously level any agriculture that's going on. I mean, they're basically, weak hurricane force winds over the span of like half the continent. It's really quite incredible. And these things cause a lot of damage, sometimes even more than a tornado, as in this case.
It causes more damage because it's more associated with like farmland, and farmland there isn't as much obstruction to break that wind, so they don't experience more damage.
Well, that's part of it. The other thing to consider is that a tornado is a very local scale phenomenon. They're just really small, and this is pretty big. And so it's just going to be more damage, even if the winds aren't exactly as strong as the tornadoes, although they can reach that strong as well.
Didn't 2020 just wreck Iowa's financial part?
Oh yeah, no, Iowa experienced hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, in financial damages related to crop loss, and that's just not even including structural damage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, derechos are bad. But yeah, I'll move on to March 10th now. This was definitely the weakest part of the event. March 10th saw very little severe weather. However, there were still some significant hail reports. Now, this is the first instance in this presentation where I wish I could have investigated more, but I didn't have time to. The thing that we want to investigate here is, well, when there isn't any surface-based lifting mechanisms to cause the severe weather, why was there still some severe weather? Ankeny, the last time I gave this presentation, suggested some upper level forcing mechanisms. And yeah, basically, if there's not something at the surface, but there's still weather, you're going to want to look for upper level things causing that, such as upper level divergence, that kind of thing. And so you can see, definitely a lot less severe weather, but there are still some pretty widespread hail reports here, significant enough to be, marked down here. And so it's kind of remarkable that even in the lowest part of this outbreak, you're still finding some severe weather associated with it. Now we're going to go to March 11th. March 11th saw a large ramp up of severe weather. The system produced 11 tornadoes today, 3 of which were F2 above, so major tornadoes. including an F3 in Perry County, Missouri, which tracked for 54 miles. I think it ransacked a bunch of trailer parks, and so that's why this day has a death count associated with it as well. Another thing to consider when assessing economic damage is damage to national forests. You might think that national forests are just like, places where you take hikes, but they're actually major economic sources for the US government because they sell them to contractors to log and stuff. And so when a tornado destroys one, it's a big loss for both the government and the state that it's in. Something to keep in mind. Sure.
The synoptic map that you showed, but then it showed the low, and then there was a cold from here. Oh yeah, the previous one,
Yeah.
sorry, but there was a low that was all the way up near Oregon. Was that this one that came through?
Oh, let me see what you're talking about. Yeah, so what you can kind of see here is this area. What you'll see, and you'll learn this in synoptic as well, as when low pressure systems come in from the Pacific West Coast, they'll go over the Rocky Mountains, and due to conservation of vorticity, among other things, they will very much weaken. And so they'll kind of bleed over the Rocky Mountains. That's kind of what you're seeing here, is this pretty weak low pressure system as it kind of goes into the American interior. Once it goes to the other side of the Rocky Mountains, though, it's going to reform and get stronger. And then that's when the system will then affect the Midwest. So that is definitely what you're seeing here. Oh, I went too far. Yep. And so you can see here is the system in question. It's occluded at this point. But you can see the cold front here, warm front here, and this is an example of a dry line, Andy. But yeah, and so you can see the severe weather reports. This one, in contrast to the last one that we looked at, is very dominated by hail. That is something that Dr. Finch suggested that I look at, is why this day's severe weather reports were dominated by hail and less so by wind and tornadoes. Again, I wish I would have had time to, but alas, I did not. Yeah. Definitely you can see the ramp up from March 10th to March 11th. And then we can talk about the big one, March 12th, 2006. This was definitely the peak of the outbreak, and it's the one that I'm most familiar with. So it's the one that I did the most analysis on. On March 12th, 62 confirmed tornadoes as a result of the day's system, 24 which were F2 or higher. This one was bad. Obviously, my hometown of Springfield, Illinois had 2 tornadoes tracked directly through it, which damaged main structure across the power loss. Other notable population centers that were hit by tornadoes this day include Monroe City, Verona, and Springfield, Missouri. Missouri in particular got it bad with this entire outbreak. Other dangerous weather associated with the system, I'm kind of reading out the PowerPoint here. Let's see. Oh yeah, softball size hail in a lot of places, and microburst winds. Are you guys familiar with the microbursts? Okay,
Yeah.
I won't explain it then. Yeah, microburst winds excess of 90 miles an hour recorded in Quad Cities, most of Illinois, or much of Illinois rather, as well as Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri got absolutely battered today. You'll definitely see this, I'll show you guys the radar. They just got hit with storms just all day. And so there was extensive damage in that city as well. 90 deaths, unfortunately, were associated with today. And as I said last time, this day was associated with the longest tracked supercell ever recorded. And so before I talk about anything else, I want to show you guys a video of the supercell. Actually, I'll show you the SWC reports first. You can see just tons of tornado reports. Yes, it was crazy. This day was absolutely crazy. But what'd you say?
It says mostly Missouri.
But yeah, so before I talk about anything else, I do just want to show you guys.
I remember that day.
Do you?
Yeah, there was some hail where I lived, and it was bad. Like it damaged one of our gutters. I remember my dad cursing one out because of it.
But yeah, this is a radar loop put together by Iowa Mesonet. I don't actually know who put this together. I used to know when I gave this presentation last time. Yeah, obviously it has the radar there, but yeah, this basically shows the birth, life, and death of the supercell. So yeah, well, I'm going to go ahead and give this a play. This is a minute long, and it goes over the course of 13 hours. So it forms in northeast Oklahoma, and then it immediately goes over the Kansas border. Right here, this is the cell that you're going to want to be looking at, I believe. And so right here, it's going to transition into Missouri. Very early on, it got severe status, excuse me. And so it's going to be, you'll see that it's going to be dropping tornadoes across its entire track up into the northeast. Right here, I think a little bit back there was dropping a tornado on Springfield, Missouri. Right now it's hitting Verona, Missouri, and then it crosses over into Illinois where it drops a tornado in Pike County. This tornado would track, I believe, around 60 miles all the way into Sangamon County where it hit Springfield. That's one tornado. And then as it left Springfield, it also briefly touched down another tornado. As you see, as it continues moving forward, and now it's going towards Indiana. This is the 5th state boundary that it's crossed. It's been about 10 hours now since it spawned. And it loses severe status right before it reaches the Indiana-Michigan border, where it finally starts to become assimilated with the rest of the storms as the cold front finally catches up to it. This thing tracked over 800 miles over the course of around 13 hours, and it tracked over 6 states. This thing was insane, and I believe so far it is the longest tracked supercell ever recorded. Doesn't it?
Like supercells, like not associated directly with cold fronts,
What?
or like supercells, or some, I don't know how to like ask this question, but like, are some supercells not always associated with cold fronts?
They are not. And in fact, oftentimes they are associated with something else that I will talk about right now.
I'm sorry that I keep asking.
No,
these
no,
questions.
questions are more than welcome. Yeah. When I did this presentation or this project, I picked one of the days to really focus in on, and that was this day, obviously, because it's the worst day. And your analysis is almost always going to start with a surface analysis. What's going on at the surface? That's going to tell you a lot about what's going on, why it's going on. And so for the surface analysis for this day, one of the things that you might be quick to assume is that, all the weather just kind of happens west to east right in a row. Like if we go back here, for example, you might think that, the day starts out and then severe weather happens and then it just like tracks across as the system moves through. But that's actually not the case for this severe weather system. Different rounds of storms happened at different times. And so key to understanding severe weather for this day is looking at which mechanisms were driving the storms and when. And that's going to tell you a lot about the storms that happened this day. And so the first thing that we're going to see is that the first round of storms happened very early in the morning near Kansas City. I'll show you guys the synoptic set. Actually, I guess I'll just show you that right now. You can kind of see what's going on right here. Obviously, you can see the classic Mid-latitude cyclone here. You got a warm front that's draped over much of the Midwest, and you can see the cold front here. But well ahead of this cold front, you can see a dry line here. Now, what?
That's really far ahead.
Yes, so that's the big thing. Obviously, dry lines, they mark a boundary between warm and moisture. Warm dry air and warm moist air. Quick quiz for you. More moist air is more or less dense than dry air?
More, it's
Less. It is less dense.
I'm gonna throw myself in.
So this dry air mass associated with the American Southwest, the desert Southwest, is going to be pushing up against this wet air mass, which is obviously from the Gulf. And since it's slightly more dense, it's going to act as a boundary, just the same that a cold front does. And so what happens is because the cold front is so far behind here, and it's just the air mass that it's interacting with is super dry. It's not actually going to be driving the storms for this event for most of the day. Most of the storms are going to be associated with this dry line here. That's what we're going to see. The first round of storms happened pretty early in the morning, mostly associated with a warm front as it moved north through the Midwest. This is where a lot of the storms that Kansas City respond from, was that warm front. And you'll see that a second round of storms in early to mid-evening were fired by this dry line here. And then a third round of storms were also fired by the dry line before the cold front finally catches up. In fact, I actually have maps to show this. The surface analysis was taken at 18Z. So this is new local time, at least local in terms of the Great Plains. And as we move forward, this one is taken at 0Z on the 13th. So this is 6 o'clock local time. You can see that at this point, the cold front still has not caught up to this dry line. So it's still not the primary factor. If we even go to 3Z, you can see that it still has not quite caught up, at least not by this surface analysis. It does catch up shortly after this. Go ahead.
So you have two things that separate air masses right next to each other. Isn't that air in the middle going to get like squeezed somewhat, and whatever that causes?
Well, so obviously when a cold front is going through a less dense air mass, that air is going to go over the cold front, right? And so there's going to be lifting there, and it's being lifted over the front. The thing is, the reason why there's no weather there mostly is because it's so dry. There's just not going to be anything there. But eventually this will overtake the rest of the dry air, and it'll start bumping against the wetter air mass, and that's going to take over as the primary factor for the storm.
So when those meet, it's not because they're colliding, but more because one's overpowering.
Yes.
Okay.
And so in fact, I will show you some radar loops from this day, and I can show you exactly what I mean when I tell you about the timing of the storms. So this is radar from the 12th of March, and we'll start going ahead. This is pretty early in the morning, looks like, yeah, it's like 1 in the morning right now. And so what you'll see first is that you'll see this first round of storms, and actually there's a couple batches of storms that are fired mostly from the warm front here. The synoptic setup right now is the warm front is kind of draped around here. The cold front is way back here right now. And then the dry line is right around here, just below that warm front. And so what you'll see is right here, this first batch of storms fired by the warm front moving north, and those are gonna just completely overbatter Kansas City. Kansas City's right around here. You can see another round of storms also kind of fired right there, and that's also gonna hit Kansas City as we transition forward. But yeah, at this point in the radar loop, the cold front is right back here-ish, and the dry line is right here-ish. And so right now, obviously, it's the dry line that's gonna be driving the storms and not the cold front. And so what you'll see here is that this first round of storms is actually, or I guess this second round of storms that I'm talking about now, it's firing a bunch of discrete cells. Most of these will turn into supercells. This cell right here is actually going to go on to be the longest lived cell, and that was fired by the dry line. You asked about cold fronts and supercells.
Yeah, like I forgot to ask this section of my question was like, I know they're associated also with dry lines, with that moisture gravity, like, but you need like circulation and shear as well.
Right. So this is something that hasn't been really well explained to me. I'm sure I could just ask Dr. Finch, and she could give me a very good explanation of this. But basically, dry lines are often associated with supercells, mainly because the dynamics that create supercells also are often present around dry lines. I don't really know the specifics of it, but the shear that is required to create supercells is often present around dry lines. And so that's why they're super associated with it. And so that's why you'll see, for example, right now, because they're primarily being fired by the dry line, these cells are very discrete in nature. And you'll see the next round of storms as well as I move forward, they're also going to be pretty discrete because they're fired by the dry line. But when the cold front takes over, they're going to take on a different mode. They're going to become more linear with the swell line.
Right, so like, because when you're like, warm moisture obviously goes like, most should go north or south to north, and then the cold goes like, it goes like this, so that's where you get the rotation from.
Right.
And so like, is the air in front of the dry line, that's going up, and the air going behind the dry line, is that going like this too, or?
Kind of. Again, it's something that I don't understand super well. Again, I could probably just look it up. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're totally fine. You have questions, I have to investigate too. You have a question?
Yeah, what makes this supercell so special? Like, obviously, it's being created in a way similar to other supercells we've seen. But why is it this one of all the ones that lasted so long?
Well, I'm going to show you guys a sounding of this environment, or at least the environment that I was created in. That's another aspect of this storm that I wish I had time to look at is, why did this supercell last so long? What was special about the environment it was traveling through? What I will say is that this supercell was probably a warm sector supercell, which means that it was tracking through the warm sector. And so that's something to investigate. Again, I really wish I had time to. South of the warm front, as opposed to it traveling north of the warm front. But yeah, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of this radar. As you can see, these cells go off to northwest and are at around 0Z, a third batch of storms, again, mostly discrete, fires off of this dry line. There's less energy to go around, and these are less well-defined than the first ones, but you can still see some of the discrete cells that are going through. Some of these do go on to be supercells. And then finally, at around 3Z, the cold front finally catches up to that dry line, and what you'll see is that the mode of the storm changes. They're no longer discrete in nature. It looks more like a squall line. And you can see as the cold front overtakes that dry line, you can see where this cold front finally is. And this will go on for the rest of the night. Yeah. Go back to my slideshow here. Here is an idea. Yes. This was a sounding for 12Z at, let's see, this was Norman, Oklahoma. And so just to give you kind of an idea of what kind of environment the supercell was being lifted into, You'll obviously take note of the beautiful cape as well as the almost ideal sheer, backing the height and all that. It's a nice looking sounding, to be sure. Something you will notice though is despite how nice this looks, you can also see this really big cap here. And you might think that a cap would not be something you want for a severe weather day. And to a certain extent you don't. If there's too big of a cap, then obviously if you can't lift the air enough to get it over that cap, then you're not going to be able to get storms and you're going to be a sad storm chaser that day.
I thought that little thing was the sin.
That is also.
Yes, convective inhibition. Yes, that's what it's capping. It's capping the potential for the air to rise. And so if you're not able to realize that potential, if you can't lift it over that cap, then you're not going to do it. But something to keep in mind is that this sounding was taken at 12 Z, so that's 6 a.m. local time, and so there's plenty of time throughout the day for that cap to be eroded away by surface warming. And in fact, oftentimes for the biggest severe weather days, you actually want a pretty substantial cap for at least most of it. The reason for that being, if there's no cap and it's just no convective inhibition, then the second there's any lifting at all, it's going to spark your storms. They're just going to go up. But that might not be what you want, because that'll usually happen earlier in the day, so there's less energy to go around. Whereas if there's a little bit of a cap and you let the day erode the cap away, then the storms will fire closer to mid to late afternoon, where it's the hottest. That's something you know from meteorology 100 or 120. And there's more energy for the storms to realize, and so there will be more severe storms. And so that's why this day was in particular so bad, was because there's this nice cap that most of the severe storms fired later in the evening when there was more energy to go around.
So like if you were to take like a photograph of the situation.
It would be hooked.
Yeah, that's another thing that I would have wanted to look at is the photograph of this. But yeah, these photographs would look fantastic if I were to have it in this presentation.
Is that just for like if the derecho didn't like pop out tornadoes, it's still kind of like that, just because there's so much like.
Well, for the ratio, you can only have straight line photographs. I mean, you would have some hooks in there, but it would be consistent throughout the whole thing. It would be a linear line, say we're moving across. I mean, those ones are going to have an ample amount of cave, an ample amount of shear. But as far as photograph goes, the shear is actually more parallel to the front that's facing this ratio, which gives it that linear orientation.
So it looked more like that kind of thing.
It'd be more straight. It wouldn't be nearly as curved as one.
Yes. Photographs is something I definitely need to learn about. I will definitely be learning about those soon. But yeah, so the big thing about this analysis that I've done for this day is this is a fantastic surface analysis, in my opinion. I do think it does a very good job of explaining how the storm has progressed over the course of the day. The main problem that I have, and again, this is the whole issue of I ran out of time because COVID happened, is a surface analysis isn't everything. You also need to look at other layers of the atmosphere, see what's going on up above as well. That would help give insight as to why these supercells were able to last so long. Additionally, the cold front going through and turning the storms into a more linear system as it became the predominant factor, like that's definitely a cause of why the storm stopped being supercell in nature and why it turned into a squall line later that night. That's not the only reason. Supercells still happen on cold fronts, obviously. And so that's something that I do need to investigate if I want to further this project, is why, in addition to just the cold front taking over, why did the storms transition from cellular to more linear? And Ankeny, the last time we talked about this, he suggested looking at 0 to 6.5 kilometer shear vectors. That was something that you had just learned about. And so that might explain why the storm
They should be more parallel to the front.
Right.
It basically just creates the storm related to each other. There is no separation. You're just gonna have one continuous.
Obviously, the shear is going to determine what kind of storms you're going to get. And so that's something that I would need to investigate if I want to do this further. I'll run oh yeah, there's another thing. When I last gave this presentation, I talked a lot about Springfield because it affected me personally. I'm not going to go through that too much. But I do want to show you this image though. This is a very famous image. Have any of you been to Springfield on Wabash Avenue? So you guys know the Lauterbach man then?
Where is that relationship?
Where's that where?
In relation to Chipotle.
It's near there. It's near there.
It's not too far now.
Yeah, this is about a 12-foot statue. These things, these kinds of statues litter the Midwest, but this one in Springfield is particularly famous. And the most iconic image from this day's tornadoes, it's all good. The most iconic image from this day's storms was a lot of black man. His head was found over a mile away.
Bastards, you killed Ken.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the more famous images. I believe it was the first tornado track right through Wabash. So that's where a lot of the damage was taken.
Why did he choose this head?
I don't, obviously, his American flag was also ripped from his hands, but someone had returned that to him at this point. So, but yeah, I'll round this up pretty fast. March 13th was the last day associated with the severe weather event. It was a bit of a wind down when compared to obviously the day before. However, there were still a lot of tornadoes associated with it. There were 15 tornadoes that touched down all right in a line, northern Mississippi and Alabama. These were, when I first gave this presentation, I was like, oh, maybe it's like a cyclic supercell. More likely explanation is just tornado family, which is just when a supercell spawns a lot of tornadoes right in a row. And that's gonna, in fact, sometimes that actually makes it hard for damage sensors to distinguish between tornadoes. But you can see that in this reports here. You can see this line of tornadoes as this system, they're basically associated with the same cold front as last time. As the system swept through, it got reinvigorated a little bit over the day. And so you can see this line of tornadoes associated with that. But yeah, just kind of a summary of all the impacts. You know, this was 5 straight days of severe weather, again in early March, which, you know, is decently uncommon. What's up?
I'm sorry, just the fact that a winter storm came through a week later, someone just really hated South Illinois that week.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about that as well. Yeah, no, a week later there were some blizzard conditions right afterwards, and so that really hampered rebuilding efforts as well. Again, you can see a total of 10 deaths as well as hundreds of injuries, very sad, as well as excess of $1 billion in damage with the entire Midwest and southern Mississippi Valley. But yeah, that is my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Just the fact that, I don't know, real quick, he said, just the fact that just on the camera, that's a definition of like Midwest weather.
Yes, for sure.
It's so ridiculous.
You have a question?
Isn't it, you know, it only spurs this question. I often hear about supercells becoming linear systems. Have linear systems ever split into supercells?
Yeah, that happens. Again, the dynamics about that are kind of for me, but yeah, that does happen. You have a question?
Oh, so like with, they said that it happened in like 5 days.
Over the course of 5 days, yeah, that's where
Is
I'm
it just because of how like fast like air masses were moving, or just why? Because like you said, like there was like a deadline test that was here, then it had like the cold front and like the cold front and another low up there and it connected. And obviously like computers say like, oh, there's low pressure,
Right.
so random low pressures everywhere. And that's like the one that was coming through, just because of how fast everything was moving through there.
Yeah, so basically it was just a quick sequence of systems, and then of course it's remarkable that it was able to refuel for each of the 4 of the 5 days. It was able to refuel enough of that moisture and energy back into the Midwest to cause all those storms. But yeah, no, it was definitely an interesting weather going on now. I know some of you guys want to go to bingo, so I'm not going to keep you guys.
Oh, you're fine. I was thinking to myself.
You guys have any other questions, comments, or concerns? I like this
You
presentation.
did great for what you got done.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm gonna.
What you get on this?
Hopefully I win. My birthday's on Sunday and I really want to win.
What'd you say?
What you get on?
Oh, what? Yeah, so this project, it's not just at the end of the semester, you get a grade thing. You're graded along the way. You start out by basically doing an impact analysis where you just look at, what things happened, how much damage caused that. And then you move on to the surface analysis where you look at, surface level stuff. And then you move on to more advanced synoptic concepts. And so you grade on that as you do the project. And then, as Anthony said, at the end of the year, she makes you make a website for it,
Yeah.
which I really wish I would have been able to do. Because that's really cool, and that's something you put on your portfolio. Make it a website.
So if actually, if you want, you can show a lobby. Back out of that. It's WIU or EDU /users /.
Me 101.
And so. Oh, it's on MySpace.
Yeah, there it is.
It's something like this as far as making a website. And it literally
cool. I really wish I would have been able to do something like this. I'm sure I could still do it, but
Yeah, some of that was like that there was large scale.
yeah.
Is that open to anyone?
I'm gonna go hack it.
You know, it's probably the issue is like, if we do this, it's not, so should
Yeah, it's a good example.
or maybe it's gonna pop a brand thing
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, all you people who haven't taken Synoptic yet, this is something to look forward to. This is a fun project as long as you pick a severe weather event that's interesting. It doesn't have to be a severe weather event either. It could be, I know someone did a winter storm for theirs. This is. Yeah. You can also do hurricanes and stuff as well. So yeah,
There's
very
actually
interesting.
a winter storm slash, I'm pretty sure that turned into severe.
Really?
Go to that one.
Let's go to that right here.
That's what.
I'm pretty sure it turned into severe. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a windstorm, I think.
When was this?
In
February of
February.
2019. I remember that, yeah.
I think that was that windstorm. That was severe.
There might have been. But yeah, no, something to look forward to. This project is, I think, a lot of fun. So
Good dishes left.
fish.
Synoptic,
The
then
T-shirt,
all
that's
that.
not really in that.
Hopefully, when you guys get around to taking physical, it's because those toys, it's very funny and like amusing and it can like